We knew that the pandemic was going to be tough in this respect, right? It was going to always hit women who were in the workplace, who were having to take time out of that workplace to work from home, harder in some respects. So what is the data now showing us?
Well, the thing that concerns me the most, Heidi, is this data is pre-pandemic data, and we're not seeing any major increases in anything. That is a concern because we've now got the baseline for next year where I fear we will see even worse results.
Which of the aspects are you most concerned about? Because really across the board, we'll get to some of the sort of positive developments shortly, but across the board there seems to be steps back being taken.
I think we just haven't seen any significant improvements in any of the gender equality indicators that we measure as we have in previous years. The gender pay gap has dropped ever so slightly by 0.7 of a percentage point. It's down to just over 20%, but that still means that men are out earning women by about $25,500 a year. Unfortunately, we've seen a significant drop in the number of organisations who are actually taking action on their gender pay gaps. So that does not bode well for the future.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because out of all of the employers that actually had a look at what was going on with the gender pay gap, only half of those took action. So what more needs to be done to ensure that it isn't just an analysis of what could be done, but actually accountability to improve that?
You know, Heidi, you and I know that the business case for gender equality is really, really clear. And I think that the importance of collecting data is we can jump on these issues when we see them if they start to go backwards. But I think the problem is too many employers are now taking gender equality as a ticker box exercise. They think that they've got their policy and strategy in place and they can let things be. That's not the case. They have to start taking action to ensure they get more women into leadership roles. They have to actually take action to ensure that their gender pay gap is addressed. They have to start planning and doing things, not just putting the framework in place.
They're on sort of autopilot at this point, is what you're saying. So what do you do then in order to jolt them to take more action, that this is not a done deal, that you can't just have check boxes and a checklist and hope for the best?
Look, Shery, I try everything under the sun. I think the issue here is that either employers do not believe the business case for gender equality, because if they did, they would absolutely take action today, because we know that then their businesses would, their productivity would increase, performance would improve, and profitability would go up. They either don't believe the business case or they don't know about it.
Okay, so let's turn to a little bit more positive news. What's a bright spot here? Because it's not all bad news, right?
No, it's not all bad news. For the first time in Australia, we've actually seen more than 50% of employers offer paid primary carers leave. It's gone up to over 52%, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, again, carers leave or paid parental leave depends on the size of the organisation that you're in and the industry that you're in. The bigger the employee numbers, the more likely you are to have paid parental leave. But the other good news is that we have seen a jump in the percentage of women on boards. It's gone up to 18.3% this year, still way too low, but it has jumped by 1.2 percentage points. And we've also seen an increase in the number of women on boards and governing bodies. That's jumped to 28.1%, up 1.3 percentage points. We haven't seen that data shift really in 7 years. So that's a bright light for us.
Libby, you talk about how you're concerned that this provides a pretty mediocre baseline before we get into the pandemic period. What sort of data are you, I guess, bracing for to see out of this year?
Well, you know, we all know that when things get tough, organisations often have to cut costs. That often means cutting headcount, and employers always go for the low-hanging fruit. That is part-timers and casuals. And we know that women absolutely 75% of women work part-time and about over 50% work casually. So they're really going to be hit hard unless employers take a more strategic approach to the way they look at headcount. I think that we've seen the industries such as arts, entertainment and hospitality and accommodation really take a hard hit. Again, there are many, many women, part-time and casual, working in those industries. I think we're going to see some big impacts on those industries. I fear that we won't see much of a reduction in the gender pay gap. In the last global financial crisis, the gender pay gap went up by 2 percentage points. We can't afford for that to happen there.
So, Libby, usually when you have such a hit to the progress that you've made already on gender equality, whether it's because of an economic slump or because of just individual idiosyncratic business problems, how long does it take you to recover and regain that pace of progress that you've made in the past?
Well, if we look at that, the 2 percentage points that the gender pay gap went up over the global financial crisis in Australia, it went up 2 percentage points in 2 years. It took us 10 years to claw those 2 percentage points back. So, it's one step forward and many steps back in that regard.